I thought, what could they possibly do to a 13-year-old kid whose only crime was he was born Jewish? How wrong I was to think that way.
So there was a terrific spy system all over the country. People were terrified. No one dared, absolutely dared, saying a word against Hitler.
On January 30th, 1933, Adolf Hitler became Chancellor of Germany. German President Paul von Hindenburg appointed him to that high-ranking position because, even though he and his advisors did not like nor trust Hitler, they thought Hitler would strongly connect with the German people, who were suffering greatly due to a poor economy, and they thought they could control him. They were wrong. They greatly underestimated Hitler's thirst for power and his extreme views, and soon Hitler was spreading his Nazi philosophies throughout all of Germany. Hitler wanted to create a German supreme race and ordered the killing of those whom he considered to be subhuman, including babies with birth defects, people with mental illnesses, and the elderly, who were no longer considered useful in the new Germany. But of all the targeted groups, Hitler's deepest hatred was for the Jews. The Jews started being transported to extermination centers, where a few from each group would be allowed to live in order to work as slave laborers. The rest, especially the young and the old, were sent straight to gas chambers that were made to look like shower rooms. The Germans who knew most about these horrors were higher-ranking German military men, but Hitler had become increasingly suspicious of attempts on his life and would change his schedule regularly. This made planning an assassination very difficult. An example of this occurred in March of 1943, when Major Rudolf Christoph von Gersdorf volunteered to end Hitler's life, as well as his own, by carrying 2 bombs in his overcoat during an exhibition of captured weapons. Gersdorf planned to stay close to Hitler throughout the exhibition, but after just a few minutes, Hitler suddenly decided to leave. Gersdorf had to run into a restroom in order to tear out the fuses before the explosion occurred. Another attempt in March of 1943 involved placing a bomb on a flight Hitler was scheduled to take. This attempt was called Operation Flash, and it had been planned by General Friedrich Obrecht and General Henning von Tresckow. They hid the bomb in packaging designed to look like bottles of brandy, and asked one of the men flying with Hitler that day to deliver the brandy to someone at their destination. The conspirators were stunned when they received a call that Hitler's plane had landed safely. The detonator had not fired. Fortunately for the conspirators, they were able to recover the package and the bomb was never discovered. It was shortly after these failed attempts that another conspirator, Colonel Klaus von Stauffenberg, was recovering after being gravely injured in battle. Stauffenberg lost his left eye, his right hand, and 2 fingers of the other hand. Even prior to this accident, Stauffenberg had become completely disgusted with Hitler's Third Reich, and he became an active conspirator in what would be known as Operation Valkyrie. The real Valkyrie was a plan for dealing with potential internal disruptions against Nazi Germany and was approved by Hitler himself. For the assassination attempt, the conspirators drew up an unofficial Valkyrie to be put into effect upon the assassination of Hitler. At that time, the conspirators would also gain control of the government. This government takeover, or coup d'etat, was necessary so that none of Hitler's top men could step into his place and continue the Nazi reign of terror. The draft of the false Valkyrie plan was typed by a woman named Margrethe von Oven. When she read the first words, she knew it meant these men were involved in a plan to assassinate Hitler, but she also remembered the atrocities that motivated the conspirators. Stauffenberg summed up the conspirators' attitude with this quote: "It's time now for something to be done. He who has the courage to act must know that he will probably go down in German history as a traitor. but if he fails to act, he will be a traitor before his own conscience. Towards the end of June 1944, Stauffenberg was promoted to a position that required him to attend regular meetings at Hitler's headquarters, and it was in one of those meetings that Stauffenberg planned to carry a bomb in his briefcase. On July 20th, 1944, that opportunity arose at Hitler's compound known as the Wolf's Lair. As Stauffenberg prepared to walk to the briefing along with some Nazi officials, he suddenly requested to change his shirt and freshen up, and he went into a small waiting room to do so. His real intention in that room was to activate the bomb that he would carry into the meeting in his briefcase. Stauffenberg used a small pair of pliers with bent handles so that he could operate them more easily with his remaining 3 fingers. He had now just 10 minutes until the explosion. When they reached the conference room, Stauffenberg took his place at the table and was a few feet to the right of Hitler. On this diagram, Hitler is at the position 1, and Stauffenberg squeezed in between positions 3 and 4. He placed the briefcase on the floor so that it was up against a thick leg support. Soon after, Stauffenberg excused himself to take a fake phone call designed as an excuse for him to leave. He did not know this, but in the following minutes, the briefcase was reportedly either shoved or moved, and it ended up on the far side of the thick wooden support for the table. At about 12:42 p.m., the bomb went off. At that point, Stauffenberg was standing outside at a safe distance. He heard the explosion end, convinced that every person in the room was dead. He and his aide quickly left the Wolf's Lair and flew back to Berlin, where they expected that Operation Valkyrie would be underway. However, there were conflicting reports of whether or not the Fuhrer was dead, and the conspirators were hesitant to put Valkyrie into effect until they were certain. Although Stauffenberg kept insisting on Hitler's demise, the truth was that he was only slightly injured. The thick wooden support for the table had protected Hitler from the main force of the blast. So, this carefully planned revolutionary attempt on the part of these brave men to assassinate Hitler and end his Nazi regime began to collapse. At a little after 9 o'clock that evening, the conspirators were unprepared when they heard an announcement on the radio stating that Hitler would be broadcasting a message to the German people. When Hitler's voice was finally heard at 1 a.m., he promised that everyone involved in the plot to end his life would be mercilessly exterminated. That promise began even before his message ended. Just after midnight on July 21st, 4 of the top conspirators were executed by a firing squad, including Klaus von Stauffenberg. As Stauffenberg died, witnesses heard him yell, "Long live sacred Germany!" For the conspirators who were not executed that night, their courage and honor were evident even in defeat. Some committed suicide out of concern that they might reveal information about other conspirators while under torture, but others asked to be arrested in order to spare their families and friends from being interrogated. This bravery continued into their trials. Many spoke out against Hitler and his Nazi regime even when they knew their deaths were very near. One said to the court, "We are resolved to take this deed upon ourselves in order to save Germany from an indescribable misery. I realize that I shall be hanged for my part in it, but I do not regret what I did, and only hope that someone else will succeed in luckier circumstances." Courageous statements like this caused Hitler to outlaw further reportings of the trials. Tresckow, prior to his death, told a co-conspirator, "Everybody will now turn upon us and cover us with abuse, but my conviction remains unshaken. We have done the right thing. Hitler is not only the archenemy of Germany, he is the archenemy of the whole world. In a few hours' time, I shall be before God, answering for my actions and for my omissions, and I shall uphold with a clear conscience all that I have done in the fight against Hitler." Whoever joined the resistance movement had to realize that his life was doomed. A man's moral value begins only when he is prepared to sacrifice his life for his convictions. It took many years after the war's end for the people of Germany to understand the full extent of the conspirators' sacrifice, but once they did, it paved the way for a better and prouder future. In the words of history professor Peter Hoffmann, the legacy of the German resistance to Hitler lives on not only in the families of those who gave their lives, but wherever their sacrifices and sufferings are remembered. So, despite the failure of the revolutionary attempts to assassinate Hitler and end his Nazi regime, the actions of the German resistance during World War II, culminating with the Valkyrie plot, proved to the world and to future generations that men will risk their lives to overcome evil and preserve freedom, and that they will stand up for what they believe in and know to be right.